Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to my very first video. As you can probably tell from the title of the video, as well as my totally inconspicuous channel name, most of my videos, including this one, will revolve around me discussing current events, global politics, global history, political ideology, and everything of the sort that ties in with the recent rise of far-right-wing populism. I'd just like to make a disclaimer that I'm not trying to radicalize or influence anyone because I've done so in the past by accident. What I'm trying to do here is inform the average person, or maybe even a few leftists, on what the alt-right believe and how the 21st century has slowly cultivated the conditions for fascism to come back with a vengeance. A good place to start would be the current state of progress, or at least what the left calls progress in the 21st century. Young people today often dismiss old values in exchange for postmodern ideals. For example, you can easily be singled out for not looking at homosexuality as something that's okay or positive. But the intent doesn't necessarily have to be malicious in your beliefs. You may just believe that male-female relationships are more natural. But this is a tough concept for the tolerance-drunk youth of today to grasp, because in their minds that's an outdated and morally wrong point of view. In his text, The Phenomenology of Spirit, published in 1807, Hegel emphasizes that people usually consider progress as a step forward from the past, but that dismissing the past entirely doesn't truly move society forward. He argued that we should look to the past for guidance to fix something we screwed up on the path to the present, kind of how you look towards your father or grandfather as a child for advice during a time of crisis. In writing this, he takes into account that just because a certain age had good qualities, it may have still had societal flaws in other respects. So we've got to give Hegel mad props for being objective. Looking to the past for things that made a certain time and place great, and revitalizing those aspects of society in a new age where nothing seems to matter, in order to make America and Europe great again, for example, is kind of how this whole thing kicked off. So we can thank Hegel for balancing nostalgia and reason. Overall, this is a key concept in the philosophy of most people who are in tune and up to speed with right-wing ideology. Looking towards the past to revel in the zeitgeist and values of different time periods, whether it's 1950s America, ancient Rome, or the Italian Renaissance, serves as an escape from present-day cultural decadence for people in the alt-right. A lot of right-wingers tend to romanticize the past because of the values that have been lost in the maelstrom of postmodern existence. These people are often alienated from social circles or friend groups due to their beliefs, because having a progressive point of view, embracing the LGBTQ community, caring more about foreigners than your own people, and so on, that's the new norm. And whenever a norm is established within society, there's going to be a new and rising wave of outcasts who oppose it. Alt-right has become this new wave of opposition to what we know as the modern world, as well as the underlying power structure that governs it. But what normies are unaware of is how much variety exists within the alt-right, because the alt-right is a reactionary movement that came about in response to the left's emphasis on identity. We see political beliefs on a spectrum, kind of how progressives see gender and sexuality on a spectrum. This in itself can be seen as a logical argument against leftist politics at its core. By identifying with a point on a spectrum that actually exists, an argument is made against a spectrum which lefties only wish could exist. The reality is that there is variety in political ideology, and depending on what kind of person you are, you'll be more prone to believing one thing or another. Whether you're on the authoritarian right or the libertarian left, the only limits to whose politics you identify with and what side you take are broad and narrow, depending on what you're comfortable with accepting and what you choose to believe. There is, however, no variety in gender and sexuality, and the selection is very narrow. The left tries to use the same kind of spectrum for sexuality and gender that exists for political ideology without taking into account the biological limits to these qualities. So in an ironic way, saying I'm a fascist or I'm a national socialist or I'm a libertarian is almost like a way of fighting back against someone who identifies as a gender-fluid, non-binary lipstick lesbian or whatever. The main argument for the right is that you have to stick within the confines of logic and the natural world in order to maintain balance and reason. Spectrums can be applied to human ideas, which can be deconstructed or reinforced because they're malleable. But things like gender and who you find attractive are black and white, governed by biology and the objective state of existence. You can be straight, gay, or bi, and you can be male or female. There is no spectrum, and there are no other options. Why do you think being transgendered emerged as acceptable only in recent years? because people were bored with the limited options presented to them by reality and wanted to spice up their identity a bit. But that's a topic I don't want to delve into too far, because it's an entirely separate one from this video. I just want to use the LGBT craze as an example of how identity can only be malleable within the confines of realistic possibility. Isn't it more profound to base your personality and identity around what you believe in and value, rather than what kind of genitals you like or what kind you wish you had in the first place? With that observation aside, let's get back to the variety that exists within the alt-right. Recent events in America have made the right wing more cohesive since it has been in a long time, mostly due to the leftist youth of the United States becoming increasingly extreme in their beliefs and actions. Now that the left is busy calling everyone who voted for Trump a Nazi and vocally advocates for their physical assault, more young Americans are starting to warm up to that label, or are at least more willing to give some serious thought to far-right points of view. So it wouldn't be a sin to say that most of the entire right side of the political quadrant would fall under the umbrella term that is alt-right, depending on their leaning towards authoritarian or libertarian beliefs. The fact that libertarians and authoritarians on the conservative right both romanticize parts of the past and essentially want to establish the same sort of security for their nation and offspring really puts them in the same boat. The only difference being that one calls himself a nationalist and the other a patriot, quote-unquote. However, despite the fact that some on the libertarian right have a lot of good talking points that authoritarians could agree upon, like immigration, the Second Amendment, etc., a few of them are nothing more than alt-right supplement vendors, like Paul Joseph Watson, Alex Jones, and Mike Cernovich, who care more about their social media standing than restoring traditional values and preserving Western culture. Still, even they serve a purpose in their own way. They can be a good way for moderates to get on board the populist train and open up to more right-wing ideals. There's actually a pretty good online cartoon series called Murdoch, in which the main protagonists embody different ideals within the alt-right. The show uses satire to explain concepts like cultural Marxism, why they are harmful when applied in political theater as well as in media. The show itself speaks from a third position point of view, acknowledging that both communism and capitalism are faulty systems in their own way, and advocating for a more peaceful future that synthesizes both authoritarian and libertarian principles with traditional values, kind of like the Roman Empire. These videos that they put up have been removed from YouTube time and time again for their politically sensitive content, but are still being uploaded by fans of the show. So I'll provide a link in the description to an online archive that has every Murdoch episode up to date, so that you can check it out if you feel like it. To make my final point, there's a clear difference between the alt-right and the alt-lite, and it's one of integrity. You can tell that Alex Jones, for example, only believes in a very small portion of what he actually says, and his role in the media as the crazy conspiracy guy gets him views, which translates into dollars. Even his lawyer said that Jones was, quote-unquote, putting on an act when he does his show in his defense during a court case. Not that I hate Alex Jones, the dude's a great meme, but he most likely does this thing for the cash and the kicks. The guy behind Murdoch, on the other hand, would be in way deeper shit if his identity was made known, making the risk greater than the reward in his case. He doesn't even have the money to afford a decent animating program, and uses stock photos with the watermark still on them to make his cartoon. If someone was to discover who this guy was, he wouldn't ever be able to find a job, and his future would most likely be destroyed. Shit, even Alex Jones has faced backlash due to his show and what he does on his show. Murdoch's goal is clear: make the message heard and use satire to bring attention to social crises that are usually too taboo to discuss. It leads one to wonder, why are they so taboo to discuss in the first place? Why do people like Lauren Southern and even Alex Jones get their content taken down? What's with all of this censorship on political dissent? Well, that's a topic that will have to be explained over the course of a few more videos, but I'm going to cut this one here before I get carried away and think of more to say. Until then, see you on the flip side.